when people go through loss of any kind, be it the end of marriage or be it the loss of a loved one, I think it's really, really important that you do go through that grieving period, because if you don't, it's going to remain in your body, and it's going to come out in some other way.
Adversity could have significant negative impacts on your emotional, physical, and social well-being.
I needed to give myself the time to grieve, and then from there, I needed to just start to find out who I was again. So I had to spend some time then trying to find out who I was again.
It could also lead to personal growth, resilience, and a deeper sense of empathy and purpose.
It really took me back to the basics in terms of rebuilding myself back up again over time.
And today, we are going to help you bounce back from adversity. The theme is embracing life's tapestry, and my guest is Margo Fox. Margo, you co-founded ABC Translate in 2001. You now help overworked and stressed out executives to bounce back from adversity. What circumstances shaped you to be the person you've become today?
Gosh, that's quite a loaded question. I suppose it started out, as you said, in 2001 when I started with my partner at the time, ABC Translate. I suppose I come from an entrepreneurial family, and I'm really, really interested in business. And I also had a language background, and my partner was a software engineer, and he also loved languages as well. So we decided to set up this company at that time, and we built that company from scratch, really, out of a box room, to a 7-figure business. We had 12 staff, in-house staff, and we had 50 translators all over the world, and we were translating into about 120 languages. So it was a very, very hectic and rewarding time. In 2005, then we won the International Merit Award for the fastest growing company. So it was a fabulous time. Obviously, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about setting up business, setting up systems, building a team, motivating that team. And then obviously all of the stresses and strains that come with running a business as well. And then in 2010, we were seeing the impact, obviously, of automated translation coming down the line. There was a rush to the bottom in terms of price. So it was becoming very, very stressful. So we decided at that point that we would get out of the business, and we sold the assets of the business. And I suppose, after that, it was an interesting time from, I suppose, kind of stepping back and taking stock and thinking about where I wanted to go next. I felt that even though I enjoyed my time in translation and building the business, because obviously I love business, I missed the people piece. And I'm really fascinated about what makes people tick. In fact, when I went to university, initially I wanted to study psychology and languages, but it didn't work out. So I still had that raw for, working with people. So I went and I did some training in psychotherapy. And while I loved it, I didn't really see myself as a psychotherapist. And then I stumbled across mindfulness, and I did an 8-week mindfulness stress reduction program. And I began to read a lot around the research, which is very robust around the benefits of mindfulness. And from there, myself and my partner founded the Irish and the British Mindfulness Institute. And we were the first company to bring mindfulness training online. And that was very, very exciting. I did that for 5 years. We were working both with online programs and then also going into corporates and training people in the area of mindfulness. And then about 5.5 years ago, my marriage broke down. I had been married for 20 years. I have 2 beautiful girls. And so I left the business at that point. I suppose when you go back to your original question, which was, what's brought you here and what defines you, I would say that period of my life has probably been the most defining period. I think that when you go through any adversity in your life, I think that is the time when you have potentially the most personal growth. And I think in those kind of situations, you have 3 options. You either stay in the past and you sit in victimhood and blame and sadness and despair, or you stay at the present and you have 1 foot in the past, so you're kind of living in limbo, or you make the decision to take massive action and catapult yourself into the future. And so that's what I've decided to do. It hasn't been easy, I can tell you. It's been a rocky road, but I wouldn't change it for a moment. It has made me a stronger person. It has made me much more empathetic when it comes to working with people who are going through adversity, because not only am I now trained in that area, but I also get it. I understand, what they're going through. And I think that makes a big difference in my coaching relationships and my training in corporates as well. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
It's a very comprehensive answer, Margo. Very much for that. So how did you manage to coordinate all the staff you had in your ABC Translate business across the world? You had about 70 staff in total, I think.
Well, I suppose it happened progressively. I had a kind of a core staff of and not necessarily, they weren't project managers when they started out with me initially. I picked people who really wanted to grow and were enthusiastic about the industry, wanted to work hard, and then we trained them up as we went along. And so initially we would have had a kind of a core team of maybe 3 or 4 people that we trained as project managers. And then we built a translation team around that. And it really evolved from there. I mean, we initially, obviously, we took any type of business that we could get. But over time, we began to specialize more in the e-learning area. We worked for one of the largest e-learning compliance companies in the world. And that brought in a huge amount of business. And as a result of getting that business, we had to grow our translation team. So it happened organically. Yeah.
Very good. And in 2005, you got an international award. What thoughts went through your mind as you received that award?
Interesting question. I felt very proud. I also felt great about the fact that I was giving employment to people. A lot of the project managers that worked with us were women who worked locally, and we were able to, give them an opportunity to work locally. And so that was very satisfying for me as well. And then also, obviously, the satisfaction that our clients were getting from the work that we did, I was very proud at the time of her. I was kind of taken aback, but very proud to see it.
And I'm one of those people who lives in the moment. Can you explain for a person like myself, what is mindfulness?
What is mindfulness? Well, there's two elements of mindfulness. So there's the formal and the informal part. So the formal part is the actual meditation. And the meditation is there to help you to be able to slow the mind down. And when you slow the mind down, it gives you a space between your response to things. So, for example, if something happens, you become less reactionary when you meditate. And this happens quite quickly. It can happen, if you meditate 5 minutes a day, it's enough to recalibrate your brain to look at the positive. So over a number of weeks, you can gradually begin to see a difference in how you manage relationships and how you manage conflict. So that's the formal component. Then the informal component is how we stay in the moment on a day-to-day basis. So our brains are made to think. I think some people think that, when it comes to meditation and mindfulness, we're supposed to actually stop the brain. And in fact, that's not the case. The brain is always there thinking, and it's whether we decide to attach to the thoughts or not that is what we're looking to do. So in connection with living in the moment, it's about noting, knowing, and letting those thoughts go, and continually bringing ourselves back into the moment. Some people think that, the Buddha who lives on the side of the mountain is always living in the moment. He has exactly the same challenges as we do in relation to not attaching to the mind and trying to put ourselves continually back into the present.
And you mentioned about the fact that your marriage broke down. In what way did you bounce back from adversity after that marriage breakdown?
Well, it didn't happen overnight. Obviously, there is a grieving period. And I think that sometimes when people go through loss of any kind, be it the end of marriage or be it the loss of a loved one, I think it's really, really important that you do go through that grieving period, because if you don't, it's going to remain in your body, and it's going to come out in some other way, and because the body holds the score. So I needed to give myself the time to grieve, and then from there, I needed to just start to find out who I was again. Because when you've been married for 20 years and when you've had children and when you've spent all of your time focused on your partner and on your kids, sometimes you lose yourself. And so I had to spend some time then trying to find out who I was again. And that came back to very basic things like, I love music, but I couldn't remember what kind of music I liked. What do I like listening to? What do I like reading? How do I like to spend my free time? So it really took me back to the basics in terms of rebuilding myself back up again over time.
Now, in terms of your client base, what are typical types of scenarios that your clients come to you with suffering from anxiety or overwork?
Well, I work. I there's 3 streams of business. So I run keynotes, and my keynotes are having had kind of a drama background as well. I did a lot of drama in university. My keynotes are quite different insofar as I don't use PowerPoints. I use props, and I use humour, and I use storytelling in my keynotes. And I find that humour is a really, really, it's very, very important because it's a benchmark for mental health. But outside of that, it's a really, really effective way of actually embedding the science and getting the message across. So I've got the keynotes, then I do trainings as well. I do a lot of trainings for managers who are around on the verge of burnout, who need some help managing the stress, building resilience. But then also I work in the communications area as well. So I train them in how to have difficult conversations, how to create psychological safety for their teams, and how to find their own purpose, and how to tell the story of their company to their team as well. And then I work on an individual basis with people and coaching them. A lot of people that come to me are on the verge of burnout or are coming out of burnout. Now, I'm not personally qualified to deal with people who are clinically burnt out because I'm a mental health and wellbeing coach. So what I'm doing is taking people from where they're at now and pushing them forward. But so in those instances, I would recommend that they go to a psychotherapist. But if that's not the case and they're on the verge of burnout or they're coming out of burnout, I help them to begin to build themselves up again, create kind of a sense of work-life balance. But there's a lot of other things that come up in those coaching sessions as well. I had one particular client who came to me who was on the verge of burnout, had been offered a position as a manager in her area, and her superior felt that she was perfectly capable of doing the job, but she had no confidence in herself. And during the coaching sessions, we established that there was a limiting belief there around her capacity to be able to do the job. And that stemmed back to an experience that she had in childhood, where she had a teacher in primary school who used to bring her up to the board every day and ask her to write the spellings on the board. And she was dyslexic, but she didn't realize she was dyslexic at the time. And the teacher got everybody in the class to laugh at her. And that was a defining moment for her, because what happened then was she created a story around the fact that she was stupid. And then as she went on through life, she looked for all the places, where she could, pinpoint how she was stupid in that instance. And if we look hard enough, we find it. And so she joined the dots in the end, in the coaching session, and she began to realize how this limiting belief had affected her in so many aspects of her life, in her personal life, in her professional life, in her relationships with her family, etc.
Do you do coaching online, or is it all face-to-face?
I like to meet the person during the first coaching session, because I like to develop the trust. And I think that there is nothing more powerful than having a face-to-face coaching session with somebody. So if possible, I travel all over the country. If possible, I like to do the first session face-to-face, and then every session thereafter then is online.
What inspires you most in life to be successful?
I suppose I like to see those instances where people that I work with have those light bulb moments. Because when they have those light bulb moments and they start to join the dots, they begin to unstick themselves. And when that happens, when that shift happens, you see people doing things that they would never have thought of doing before. So really, the satisfaction for me is seeing people letting go of fear, letting go of limiting beliefs, and just living their best life, doing what they're supposed to be doing in this life. And I find that really, really rewarding, really rewarding.
You mentioned about storytelling and humour in your keynote. How long did it take you to embrace the whole area of storytelling to engage your audience? Because you have to use stories. That's my understanding of storytelling, is to engage your audience at an emotional or visceral level. How long did it take you to develop and refine that technique?
I think I started out doing it quite gingerly. I come from a family of storytellers, really, and I suppose I'm Irish. It's in our DNA. We're all storytellers to some degree. But I suppose I started out maybe, as I said, gingerly. I had my tell one story. I tell a lot of stories now about my two daughters. They don't even know I do it, but I do. And so I would have started out maybe with testing, going in and testing it, telling one or two stories and seeing how it landed. And what was happening was that people on my programs were coming back maybe the following week when we would do another session and saying, I remember that story and I connected it with something that's happening currently with me in my life. So when I got that kind of feedback, I just thought to myself then, this is working. This is actually working. I need to keep doing this. So then I began to introduce more and more and more story and more humour as well, because, humour is the benchmark for mental health. The less we're laughing, the higher the risk is that we're going to end up on antidepressants. I mean, that's the reality. So, and I suppose with my drama background as well, it made sense for me to be able to integrate all of these pieces. And then I started to bring props into training sessions in corporates. And that I felt was kind of high risk as well, because, you're coming in with your bag of tricks and people are wondering, what's she doing with this whip and this wand and, and that was done very gingerly as well. And, constantly watching and getting feedback from people to see how it was landing. So it didn't happen overnight.
Do you ever do improv to help to refine your storytelling and use of props?
Sorry, what did you say there?
Do you ever use improv to refine your storytelling technique and to refine your use of props?
Yes, I have. So I might have, for example, there's one exercise that I do. It's called 5 Chairs, 5 Choices. And it's around how we can either react or respond in different situations. And it depends on which chair you sit on. So when I introduce this exercise, I tell a personal story about me and my daughter, and I talk about how I could have sat in any of those 5 chairs. And the first time I did that, I got such a positive reaction from people. I asked people in the group, would they like to come up and give me an example in their life, maybe in their work or their personal life, where they might be able to use this technique. And they found it really, really helpful. So yeah, I mean, I obviously have a framework for my training when I go in, but I suppose with my drama training and my improv training, it's loose. It's loose. And I really feed into the people that I'm working with when I'm using the different techniques.
One final question for you, Margo. If you were given the opportunity to have one request granted without question, what would that be?
Well, I'm 55 years of age now, and I'm working in this area 10 years, and I really don't think that I have even scratched the surface. So I suppose my wish would be that I would be able to continue to do this work as long as possible. I think I'm very lucky to have found something that I really, really love. And I think it's using all of my skills. I think I've found my purpose. And I just want to be able to do this as long as possible and help as many people as possible for as long as they want to listen to me.